Hello, this is Case Study QB, and I am here with Virginia. She is one of the people behind Louisiana for Bernie, which is a progressive account that used to support Bernie Sanders back in his race from 2016 and also when he ran in 2020. And Virginia reached out to me on Twitter because she wanted to make me aware that, we have the Cedric Richmond race. Is a special race going on because Cedric Richmond he's now in the Biden administration. So his seat, he was a representative for Louisiana in District 2, and his seat is open now. So this is a blue seat, which means that is most likely whoever wins the primary is going to be the congressperson. Similar to how when AOC won her race in the primary, it was pretty much automatic that in that seat, the Democrat was going to win. So this is very important for us to make sure that we fight for the right person in the primary for Louisiana District 2. So she made me aware that something strange happened. Now, Our Revolution Nationals endorsed a woman named Karen Carter Peterson. And Karen Carter Peterson used to be a Hillary Clinton supporter back when Bernie ran in 2016. So luckily for us, there's a man named Gary Chambers Jr. who is running, and he was a Bernie Sanders supporter, or is a Bernie Sanders supporter, I should say, as recent as 2020. And he is the true progressive that we should be supporting in this race. And I just wanted to bring light to the situation. And unfortunately, Our Revolution, you got it wrong this time. I'm not going to try to say the whole organization is bad, but this is something that we want to point out, when our leaders do something wrong or when our organizations do something wrong, we have to call them out on it. So let me introduce Virginia. Virginia, say hi.
Hi.
Thank you for reaching out to me. And let's get into it. So first of all, I want you to give your spiel. What do you want to say about this topic?
Well, the thing with us is when we first saw it, it was a surprise when we first saw the first tweet. And it was like, we're familiar with Karen Carter Peterson, and I'm not saying anything personal about her because she's a good woman. She's worked hard for Louisiana. She's worked hard for the DNC, but she's not involved in the progressive movement. There's nothing, like in Bernie world, kind of progressive. There's nothing about her, that. And we really do want to know more. And we've asked Our Revolution, and they have not replied back to us in any way about how they came to this decision. If they should have waited till the end of qualifying day and looked at the whole entire list of people, because I think there are over a dozen people running in the race. There are a lot of people, but at this point they're just they're two establishment candidates. One is Troy Carter, and he's got Cedric Richmond backing him, and then Karen Carter Peterson, and unfortunately, she's got Our Revolution backing her. And the thing that just shocks us is that Karen has never been one to be fighting for Medicare for all or a Green New Deal. She's late to the party. And the fact that Our Revolution is satisfied with a candidate that is just now willing to say, I'm for Medicare for all. I'm for a Green New Deal. It's just really frustrating. As much as we have supported the movement, Bernie and Our Revolution and the other thing that's upset us is Ro Khanna, who was the co-chair of Bernie's campaign, has chosen to endorse Troy Carter, who is Cedric Richmond's pick. And that one hit us out of the blue too. It was like Ro, did you even check out the field?
Wow.
And Troy hashtagged his endorsement with hashtag CBC. So obviously it was a Congressional Black Caucus favor.
Okay.
But how can Ro do that to us down here? How can Our Revolution do that to us down here? We finally got a chance for change, real change. Anybody that has listened to Gary Chambers knows that he's going to fight for the things he says he's going to fight for.
So I have this website, uptownmessenger.com, and it talks about, the headline is a news website. Majority of Louisiana Democratic superdelegates support Clinton. Governor Edwards still uncommitted. And this is by Robert Morris back in March 3, 2016, right? And this has, it says here, U.S. Representative Cedric Richmond is also a superdelegate based on his office and has been actively campaigning for Clinton for months. Back in December, for example, Richmond was stumping for Clinton in South Carolina, which later proved to be a key victory for her. And unfortunately, this was back in 2016, and then we also saw in 2020, South Carolina was a big victory against Bernie, unfortunately. And then, but this is the point I wanted to highlight. It says, another prominent supporter of Clinton is State Senator Karen Carter Peterson of New Orleans, chair of the state Democratic Party, who hosted a debate watching party for Clinton campaign back in December. So here I'm bringing receipts on the fact that Karen Carter Peterson was truly a Clinton supporter.
When we started the Bernie account in Louisiana, and we were trying to get people excited and all of that, we ran into a lot of problems with the Louisiana Democratic Party.
Yeah.
They actually hosted Bernie down here for one of their dinners. That was early on in the campaign, but as we got towards the fall of 2015, they were openly supporting Hillary Clinton, which is fine and everything. But we got into the weeds with it and dug into their bylaws. And their bylaws stated that if the state party did not endorse a presidential candidate, which they didn't do in 2016, then the chair and the rest of the officers in the party could not fundraise or promote a presidential candidate. Well, they completely ignored that. They were fundraising for Hillary. Hillary went to Baton Rouge, and they organized to help get buses from New Orleans. They did all that. It culminated in the Louisiana Democratic Party having a brass band with waving Hillary signs outside of headquarters on election day. So they were in no way impartial. And that hurt our feelings. And actually, Karen was very sassy back to us on Twitter, actually in public, because they didn't think there was any consequence. They figured Hillary Clinton was going to win, and they'd never have to answer to anybody. Well, now with Karen going after, I don't know whether she pursued the Rev endorsement or if they pursued her.
Okay.
That would be interesting to find out. But to me, it's shameless for someone who was so anti-Bernie in 2016 to go to the organization that was founded after his campaign. It just really just hurts my feelings.
This is what I want to say. Just because she supported Hillary Clinton in the past doesn't mean somebody can never be a true progressive. I think I go back to, Ayanna Pressley, she supported Hillary Clinton in the past. And then now one thing that is one of the things, and I would say she's probably, if I were to rank the squad, she'd probably be number 4 if you 1 to 4, just because of that credential. But she has been on interviews, and without being prompted, she would show her support for Medicare for All, which means that's what I'm looking for. I want you to be an advocate for Medicare for All, right? So, but this is where I want to bring in, Virginia, that not only is Karen Carter Peterson, there's questionable, she has Medicare for All on her website, but there's some questions there of how full-throated of a supporter she is. So I'm going to go into some things that I've researched and some things that might be problematic in her past, just to let the people know why, some other reasons why she's not the most progressive person in the race. So here's a website called LouisianaVoice.com, and the headline says, DNC not alone in internal turmoil. DSCC members call leadership of Senator Karen Carter Peterson into question. And this was written in November 7th, 2017 by Thomas Well. That's what it has here. And I'm just going to read a couple of the highlights, things that I highlighted here. In an organization that is perpetually financially strapped, the executive committee, once stacked with her appointees, they're talking about Karen, awarded her an annual stipend of $36,000 plus expenses. This was done without the approval of the Democratic State Central Committee, most of whom were unaware of the stipend. She has continued taking the money in her second term, again without approval.
Oh,
Peterson also has made it a point to take care of family in her role as chairperson. Her sister Elaine Carter was paid $13,000 during October and November 2015 for organizational grassroots consultation, quote unquote. According to figures provided by the Louisiana Ethics Commission, Peterson denies being among the three prominent Democrats, including then Senator Mary Landrieu, who met with then Senator Representative John Bell Edwards at New Orleans International Airport in 2015 and tried to convince him to withdraw from the governor's race so that a moderate Republican might be elected. Landrieu has since apologized for her part in the effort, but Peterson has not. So this was a case where the Democratic Party, the leadership, or you would say like almost you could call her a boss in Louisiana, tried to convince this person, John Bell Edwards, who I believe is your governor right now, right, Virginia?
right. He's on his second term.
On his second term, they try to convince him not to drop out of the race so that a moderate Republican could be elected.
I'll tell you a little bit about the Louisiana Democratic Party right now. Is Karen's no longer the chair, but they've elected an almost Republican to chair the Republican Party, the Democratic Party now.
Wow.
She's given money. The new chair of the Louisiana Democratic Party has given money to Clay Higgins, who, if you know anything about Clay Higgins, he's a nut. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But getting back to Karen, I don't know that much about the stuff you just talked about, but I will say this about the New Orleans. They call it the New Orleans political machine, and it is a machine. They basically, the only base that Democrats have in Louisiana is basically in New Orleans, because they can, they can get out the vote in New Orleans, but their machine is a machine, and it does stuff just like the stuff you just talked about in that article. They do stuff like that all the time.
All the time.
I mean, dirty politics down here. People, you can't even question it. I mean, when I went to a reporter about the stuff about the Louisiana Democratic Party pulled during the 2016 primary about just violating their own bylaws, the reporters wouldn't touch it. Our reporters do not go. I mean, unless it's just something, way blatant, they're not going to get into little messy, things like that.
Yeah. No, I understand. Let me read the last part of this article, and then we'll move on. Karen Carter Peterson is an ambitious politician of questionable loyalties who has used her chairmanship of DSCC to build a fiefdom and to launch a national career, all at the expense of the organization she was elected to build and serve, the DSCC members said.
The most important thing, when we're talking about Karen, is the fact that when our revolution says she supports Medicare for all, well, then if you do a quick search of her Twitter history or, anything online, you don't see Karen, talking about Medicare for all last year or in the last 6 months. You don't see her supporting national nurses or any of the groups that are promoting Medicare for all. Those aren't her contacts. The part about this endorsement by Our Revolution that really gets to me is because it seems to be an endorsement by Our Revolution Executive Committee, their board, who they have a lot of people on there that are DNC members, and it's like that's where she got her in, is through the DNC. And if you think about what the DNC did to Bernie in 2016, that's the part that's so nauseating. That now, Our Revolution is going to say, oh, well, look, here's a DNC member in Louisiana. Let's support her instead of supporting activist Gary Chambers, who supported Bernie. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. All right. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the other people in the race, or the one other person. So as far as I know right now, you correct me, Virginia, I know there's several people running, and of course there's always a lot of people that don't have a lot of name recognition, but it seems like the main people right now is Troy Carter, senator. He's a state senator, Troy Carter, and then you have Karen Carter Peterson, and then you have Gary Chambers, right? Now, is there another establishment? I remember we talked before and you said there might be one more.
Those are the three. As far as Democrats, those are the three.
Those are the three. So
I think there are a couple.
So we got two people that's trying. Well, Karen is trying to straddle the progressive lane and almost be in the establishment to a certain extent. She's trying to be in the middle, right? Mhm.
That is going to be her hardest part because
Yeah.
she wants to, like she wants to promote Emily's List. She wants to
Mhm.
promote
Mhm.
all of those vote blue, no matter who
Yeah.
endorsements, that kind of thing. But then
Yeah.
now that's the part is that she's kind of swerved into Gary's lane and is
Yeah.
trying to grab, Medicare for all and Green New
Oh
Deal.
wow.
Now,
Wow.
mind you, most hardcore DNC people aren't running around talking about Medicare for all or
Yeah.
Green New Deal. So
Yeah.
she's stretching it. I'm sure a lot of her people don't like to see her talking about that. And I
Mm.
watched Our Revolution tweet something about defund the police. Well,
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that Karen Carter is not going to be talking about defund the
Different.
police or abolish ICE or
Yeah.
any of
Yeah.
the things, like that. I mean, so she's going to have a hard time
Yeah.
saying that she's a true blue, progressive,
Yeah.
and then also saying, oh, Emily's List and all of those super PACs and all of the
Yeah.
things that are like rewards.
Yeah.
It's like they're all rewarding her for her time on the DNC versus
Interesting.
looking at
Interesting. Mm.
the kind of candidate Louisiana needs. I mean, we rank 50th on most every damn list. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And we're first on most every bad list. And the
That's
people that are
unfortunate.
responsible for that are like our state senators, like Troy Carter and Karen Peterson. I mean, they have some responsibility. They've been in state government for 20, maybe 30 years for
Mhm.
Troy. But I mean, they
Mhm.
have, they're
Yeah.
partly to blame for the
Yeah.
states, that Louisiana's in. So that anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
So
just really disappointed.
I want to touch on this website, primaries.substack.com. And this is an interesting website that talks about primaries, progressive primaries. And it touches on the Louisiana 2nd District. So you just talked about how Ro Khanna, unfortunately, he endorsed State Senator Troy Carter, and it shows here in this
Mm-hmm.
at this website at this article that they wrote on this district. They talked about how what he's
Mm-hmm.
against, or he condemns defund the police movement. So it's one thing to be critical of,
Oh yeah,
the logo, the critical of the name defund the police, but maybe be still aligned with the objectives of trying to divert money away from
right.
police and then towards the community. But he literally
Mm-hmm.
he wrote a resolution to condemn the defund the police movement. This guy, State
Yeah,
Senator
I didn't
Troy
know that.
Carter. He also said because Cedric Richmond is so terrible, he has somewhat predictably endorsed Carter, which is what you said, and who appears to be
Mm-hmm.
the worst option. That's what this person who he's writing. Obviously, this is a progressive
Mm-hmm.
website. We both agree
Mm-hmm.
from what we're hearing. From what we're hearing, Senator Troy Carter is the worst person.
Like Ro Khanna endorsed Troy Carter, who
Mm.
is Cedric Richmond's pick. You have to look at the way, the condition that Cedric Richmond has left Louisiana. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
Cancer Alley is
Oh man,
Louisiana '02.
yeah.
You
Oh
know what I
man.
mean? And so
Mhm.
I posted an article last night about that the Guardian ran about how Cedric Richmond has ignored his constituents in St. James Parish. When Rise St. James has had Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign down there
Mhm.
over
Mhm.
and over, to amplify, what's going on in St. James Parish, to show
Yeah.
all of the people that are dying of cancer and all of
Wow.
that. Well, Cedric Richmond hadn't been down there. Cedric Richmond hasn't met with them. When they tried to meet with him, he's been very short with them. And so
Wow.
now, I mean, to think about, when Louisiana newspapers say, "Oh, we've got two great contenders for Louisiana '02," and then they say, "Oh, here's Troy Carter, here's Karen Peterson," and it's like, what have either of those people done for the people of Cancer Alley? Nothing,
Nothing.
nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've never met
Yeah.
with them. They've never been at the rallies. They've never, been at the marches from St. James Parish to Baton Rouge. Those people have never been in sight, and now they're coming and asking for those people's votes. And I'll be damned, but Gary Chambers is going to get their votes.
Yeah, yeah. Let's hope
So,
so. Let's that's what we're here for, to advocate for
yeah.
Gary Chambers. So this is what they talked about for State Senator Karen Carter Peterson. She voted for Troy Carter's anti-defund solution, tried to privatize school lunches, and works for a corporate law firm with some pretty scuzzy clients. And then she also has gotten some high-profile endorsements, including Stacey Abrams, Emily's List, and Our Revolution. That's what we're talking about here, as well as some local politicians. Her biggest endorsement to date is New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell. Carter Peterson has laid down a few policy priorities so far on her website, Twitter, and in public statements, and it sounds a lot like a politician trying to ride a ideological line to scare off neither moderates nor progressives. For instance, she supports Medicare for all, but her language is always about wanting to work towards Medicare for all or expand access to healthcare for all. We asked if access, exactly. We asked if she liked to clarify what the phrasing entitled, but her campaign never got back to us. Also, she also supports a federal investment in green jobs and as a DNC member called for a climate debate, but won't say the words Green New Deal as far as we can find. In other words, she's a clearly and significant improvement over Richmond, but not a likely squad member. Go ahead, Virginia.
Well, I hadn't read that. That talk about on point. I mean, that really is true. And I think maybe yesterday or the day before she did tweet something Green New Deal. It must have been yesterday because it was after Biden did his thing. But you see, I mean, it's just in reaction to people calling her out on not. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Her language is not the language of a progressive talking about these policies. And I talked to one of the environmental groups in New Orleans, and they're going to be having a candidate forum. They don't have a date set or anything like that, and I'm really looking forward to it because we're going to be able to see and hear the language that these other two candidates are using in contrast to the language that Gary Chambers is using.
Correct,
you know what I mean? Because we watched in the 2020 primary all of those presidential candidates who jumped on board. They announced, and they were all running on Bertie's platform, Medicare for all of that. And then by the time, as the primary went on, once they started getting questions about Medicare for all and all of that, they froze. We saw how Kamala did with Medicare for all once they asked her about the insurance companies. I'm sure if Karen was asked about the insurance companies, she'd probably respond just like Kamala did. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's they're gonna show their own. They're gonna show themselves by the end of this primary because they're not going to be able, even though they've got this endorsement or that endorsement and they've typed hashtag Medicare for all or hashtag Green New Deal, if their language isn't, doesn't support that, people aren't stupid. Progressives in Louisiana know what's real. So I think it's going to fix itself as we get further along in the primary.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
because
Virginia.
This is a primary. So,
I'm sorry, babe. No problem. Thank you so much, Virginia, for spending your time and talking to me. And one more time, I'm just going to advocate for Gary Chambers Jr. He's for the Medicare for all. He's for the Green New Deal. We saw it. He talked about it himself in his opening intro video that you can go to his website. Go to Chambers for, here it is. Go to chambersforchange.com. And just look at his website, try to give some money if you can, and volunteer if you can. And as we can see also in the same primaries.substack.com, it talks about how he was an activist. He even went to prison because he was protesting. So that's the type of person you always want. You want an activist to be an activist for the people.
He's been on the street.
Yes.
He's been on the streets. That's the other thing is you won't find Troy Carter or Karen Peterson at a Black Lives Matter rally. There aren't any pictures of them in New Orleans or Baton Rouge, over this summer or like with Alton Sterling. You're not going to find either of those two people supporting the movement. But at all of those things, you'll find Gary Chambers there.
Now, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Thank you so much, darling.
Yeah. Thank you, Virginia.
Just thank you so much for caring about what's going on down here.
Oh,
It's really important to us, and we appreciate your support.
Hey, listen, my job here on the internet is to push progressive policy, push progressive candidates, and especially when I see that there's a choice between a less progressive and a more progressive candidate, I need to let the people know as much as I can the who the real choice
Mm-hmm.
is, and that's what we're here for. So,
Right.
Virginia, thanks again
Right.
for your
And
time.
okay, one last
Go
thing
ahead.
was one last thing I want to say is just draw attention to the fact that Sean King called our revolution and Rokana out today as well.
Oh
If
wow.
anyone wants to
Okay.
check his timeline,
Okay.
Sean's as upset about it as we are.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
there are people that are paying attention, and
Yeah.
we just want to spread the good word about Gary. We don't want to get in a fight.
Yeah.
We don't want his campaign to be a fight with
Yeah.
these other people, but we do want to stand up for him. So,
Exactly.
thank
A
you
hundred
again for
percent.
all of your help.
100%, and that's not to throw
Okay.
out our revolution out with the baby out with the bathwater, but we definitely have to call out our
Right. We
leaders.
think it's a
You know,
mistake.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Ro Khanna is a Justice
It's a
Democrat.
mistake by him.
He made a mistake when AOC ran the first time, and he was called out, and then
Right.
he did a dual endorsement of Crowley and AOC. So we calling him out again, and we need him to do his research. I'm not saying, like, me personally, I would just go with the more progressive person in the race. But if you want to do a dual endorsement, you can make it a wash. That's fine. But hopefully he listens to the people.
Right.
And by him doing the dual
Right.
endorsement back then, it showed that he at least listened to the people. Some people would just
Right.
would have been strong headed and just went along with Crowley, but he at least listened to the people. But we need strong progressives backing
And
strong candidates. Thank you so much,
okay.
Virginia, and you have a good day. And to my audience,
You too,
let's
baby.
back Gary Chambers Jr. All right.
Yes. Go, Gary. Thank you so much.